it's fluid, depending on which electorates they're trying to court in the next election. That definition changes, and on that, AK Party is very adaptable, and they are very sensitive to details in public opinion in that sense. Because normally, AK Party gets its votes by being the party of the periphery, which is struggling with the center. And center's priorities are security and anti-terrorism. Priorities of the periphery is civil liberties, expansion of democracy. When AK Party wants to get the votes of the liberals, they emphasize the liberal aspects of it. And when they try to get the votes of the nationalists, they can easily, within a matter of weeks, can shift into a nationalist discourse. So I think it's very fluid. Yes, please.
Yeah, Andy Steigman, Associate Dean, School of Foreign Service. There's a recent piece I read about the increasingly close cooperation between the Turkish government and Iraqi Kurdistan. Mm-hmm. I wonder if you'd comment on the role that the Iraqi Kurds are likely to play in playing out on version 2.0.
Yeah.
What influence will they have?
Very important. One thing is that Turkish relations with the KRG significantly changed towards the opposite in the last 10 years after the war in Iraq. Once the United States was there and once the KRG was the main US ally there, Turkey realized that Kurdish autonomy in Iraq was inevitable. And the best thing to do is to not resist to this, but in fact invest in this and have some say over it in the future. And basically, investments, infrastructure constructions are done exclusively by Turkish companies in the KRG. Mm-hmm. Turkish companies, governments, companies that have ties to government members make exceedingly well money over KRG. You have some, formerly maybe like transportation or housing construction companies close to the government, suddenly evolving into natural gas companies and going into KRG and running after natural gas concessions or oil concessions. So government has a very strong business interest in the KRG. And that's why, for example, in the general AK Party main Congress, you have Mesut Barzani being invited. And all, for example, AK Party members are greeting him as hero. 15 years ago, him coming to Turkey, it would be kept secret. It was such a toxic thing. Now he can be greeted as a hero. People expect, at least AK Party expects him to act in some, we poured so much money over KRG, please do something about this kind of thing. And in that sense, what they are specifically doing is that especially those who work in energy business in the KRG report that there's this agreement between PKK and Mesut Barzani, who actually controls the northern part, Turkish-Iraqi border. They make sure that they do not attack, for example, Turkish business interests in the KRG. And in that sense, you cannot force KRG into attacking PKK because it's very difficult. They cannot tangibly do it. And it's also very politically costly to be able to unite Kurds into one single thing. But basically, when Turkey does something liberal or something, when it starts an opening, the KRG is acting like a legitimizer. They make statements saying that, yes, Turkish government is actually resolving this. It's an important thing. We support this. And by that, they are basically becoming legitimizers of Turkish government's Kurdish policy. That's how they...
Playing any mediating role?
Huh?
Are they playing an active mediating role at all?
Mediating role? I mean, Kurdish politicians meet with the KRG, but within the Kurdish, political scene, there's always this, primacy and leadership crisis. I mean, Turkey's Kurds look at the KRG and say, fine, but I mean, we do not really answer to them. We are a very unique movement on our own. So they don't really accept them as mediators in that sense. To them, mediation, I mean, they are able to mediate directly with the Turkish government and the Turkish state. They don't need an intermediary. They just look at the KRG and they get very enthusiastic about, their fortunes, but that's basically very limited,
Thank you.
So, yeah, sure. Yes, please.
My name is Connie Zulam. I'm with the American Kurdish Information Network here in DC.
Mm-hmm.
Two related questions. You treated Kurdish question at arm's length, as it were. I was curious if you could share with us your own personal opinion. For example, in political science classes all over the world, we teach undergrads a government's purpose is the happiness of its citizens. In the 89 years of the Turkish Republic, 50 million Turks or Turk wannabes and then 20 million Kurds. Would you say that Turkey has met that test, the happiness of the Kurds? And then the second question is, Time just announced 100 influential people in the world, and 2 people from Turkey made it to the list. Turkey, 1% of the world, but two thinkers. One, Gülen, who's in exile here in U.S., and the second one, Öcalan, who's in Unver. What does that say about Turkish democracy? 2 of its most influential people cannot even be there.
Well, I mean, before asking, Turkish state enabled the happiness of the Kurds, you can ask whether Turkish state enabled the happiness of Kurds. I mean, because...
Well, they banned at least one language, but they didn't ban the other language.
Yeah, but I mean, Kurdish is not banned right now, right?
89 years wasn't banned?
No, right now it's not banned.
How many universities are there in Turkey in Kurdish?
I remember Dicle University. There's basically Kurdish language teaching right now, yeah. But basically, when you look at Turkish state, it's a very Weberian understanding of state and executive bureaucracy. I mean, in that kind of Weberian countries, I don't think happiness of the citizens is the thing. It should be, but I mean, it's a very bad origin in terms of, analyzing Weberian republics, and Turkey is a Weberian republic, and in that sense, you can ask in Australia maybe or Switzerland, happiness of the citizen, but other than a handful of countries in the world, I doubt whether the majority countries in the world actually ensure happiness of their citizens. So I don't know. The second thing is that, well, Gülen, I'm not an expert on Gülen, frankly. Öcalan may be about him being this, once captive and now coming into the political process. American media likes to be, what's the word? It wants people to debate certain things. The best way you do that is that you make very interesting claims and very, new things. And basically putting Öcalan in that list is a new thing. I look at it as basically journalism strategy, not necessarily it's a reflection of what Turkey is. Yeah.
Deniz Güven, Turkish Coalition of America. Could you comment on the İmralı records, especially 2 things pertaining to those? There are veiled and direct threats from Öcalan should the process fail, as to things would get worse than it used to be in terms of national security aspect. But also, there is a connection that is made between PKK and the Central National Intelligence Agency in Turkey that Uğur Mumcu first, I think, alluded to. Could you elaborate on that as well?
Well, the relationship between the security?
It is said that MIT was actually behind the formulation of PKK. And that's a thesis apparently first thrown out by Uğur Mumcu, but there isn't really much else on that.
Well, I actually had done research on this a lot, just to curb my own enthusiasm. It's debatable. I mean, if I found something, would I be able to publish it? I don't know. But quite honestly, I'm not saying this because I'm here. Very honestly, I came across a lot of very believable arguments, but my research didn't lead me to a conclusive evidence on that. So You know, that's a bad thing about asking questions to scientists. They always have to answer to you from the perspective of their evidence. And I mean, I can just treat them as very interesting positions. I didn't find, yeah, I mean, maybe there is, but I mean, you can also call me a bad researcher on that as well, but I just couldn't, yeah, sorry. Yes, please.
Thank you. Tom from Master of Foreign Service Program. My question would be PKK's image in Kurdistan after peace process. When you look at the discourse of Öcalan or KCK constitution, you see elements of radical democracy, municipality being like independent kind of thing, but they also reject capitalist elements of the society. So how receptive do you think Kurdish society would be to that imagination given the economic boom across the border in Northern Ireland?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Again, we have all good questions here. How receptive Kurds are. One thing I realized is that what Öcalan says or what Kurdish politicians say in general, with the exception of the KRG, that's generally not an accurate indicator of Kurdish public opinion at any given time. Because one of the main evidence on this is that Öcalan, coming from a Marxist-Leninist background, and really seeing religion, especially from 1980s onwards, basically as a threat to what PKK seeks to do. And in the 1980s, it actively targeted a number of spiritual leaders, religious leaders as well. And when you look at the latest leaked report, he's speaking as if he's Necmettin Erbakan. So, I mean, Öcalan and all Turkish Kurdish politicians, they are very good in creating a new discourse based on the priorities or necessities of their particular time. I'm not saying this in a bad thing. I'm not saying that they're opportunists or not. All good leaders have to be agenda manipulators in that sense. But with regard to how would they respond to that financial aspect, when they look at KRG, I feel that they see that well, when money is coming and going, and especially when there's a lot of debate about KRG being the new Kuwait, for example, because of the oil and natural gas reserves. I haven't done the research on it, but I would expect that that KRG example there is a good indicator that actually capitalism may not be such a bad thing. But I'm definitely not an expert on the financial ideology of Kurds. You have to ask that to an expert. That's just my sense. Akin.
My name is Akin Arabacı. I'm still a PhD. Thank you very much for your valuable analysis, first of all. You have talked about Erdogan's ambitions for becoming the second Atatürk, but you haven't talked about Abdullah Öcalan's ambitions becoming another Atatürk.
Yeah.
Admittedly, I know this is an easy question for you because I have read an interview of you, which I have totally agree. I mean the similarities in the rhetoric of Abdullah Öcalan with the with the typical nationalist, nation builder ideas, referring to ancient Mesopotamian Kurdish civilization and speaking of necessity of becoming a modern nation, modernity, but to modernize in our